Hey there, listeners. Hola, amigos. Before we dive into today's episode, we have a very small favour to ask. If you enjoy our podcast and want to help us to keep bringing you great content, the best way to support us is by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute, but it makes a huge difference because your ratings and reviews help more listeners to discover our show. And it keeps us motivated to continue doing what we love and bringing you more content for free. Plus, we love hearing your feedback. So if you have a moment, head over to Apple Podcasts, give us a rating and leave a very quick review. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's get into today's episode.
Welcome to the Costa Property Podcast, the podcast that turns your dreams of owning a piece of paradise on the Costa del Sol into reality. I'm Warner Laurie, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Sandra Laurie.
Join us as we embark on navigating the ins and outs of real estate and relocation to this beautiful region.
We're not just about market trends, we're about sharing real-life experiences, because we know the struggle firsthand, and I've helped many people navigate this challenge also.
If you're dreaming of your perfect Costa del Sol home and want to get real, no-frills, expert advice, then you're absolutely in the right place. Join us each week as we share honest insights and information that will guide your journey. How do I actually find a job in Spain? Maybe you don't speak Spanish. Maybe you're not sure where to look, or you think that your career might not translate here. This is the episode for you. Today I'm joined by Serena Faithful, a senior recruitment manager who's spent years and years placing professionals from all walks of life into real roles here in Spain, including me. She's worked across various industries, helped hundreds of internationals land jobs here, and in today's chat, she's breaking it all down. Where to start, what works, what most people get wrong, and the insider tips you just won't find in Google when you're starting your property search in Spain. Plus, she's sharing real stories of people who've made the move and have really made it work. So if you're feeling unsure or overwhelmed, trust me, this is really going to help you. Let's have a little Spanish word of the day. So the Spanish word of today is trabajo. And this is the Spanish word for job or work. So before we go into all of the good stuff that you're going to share with us today, tell our listeners a little bit about you, how you got into recruitment, how you got to Spain. Yeah, tell us all about you.
First of all, a pleasure to be here. Thank you for that. So I came to Spain 18 years ago, midlife crisis, but I'm not telling you how old I am. Recruitment for about 10 years at that point. Standard thing, fell into it by accident, high street recruitment agency. I had a chance to do a lot of different jobs. So when I came to Spain, I thought, okay, let's try and find something. It did take me a little while. It wasn't immediate. And then I had an opportunity to cover a maternity leave as a recruiter and ended up staying at that company for most of the 10 years that you and I have known each other. And only in the last year and a half moved to another company. So I just bought all the skills and everything that I needed. I brought them with me to Spain. I was pre-Brexit, so it was a little easier in terms of finding a job there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, just so our listeners actually understand like the context of how much recruitment you do, you work for what we would call a high volume recruitment company. So you actually place thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people into their roles, really demanding position. And you've placed everyone from entry level positions right up to like senior board members into those senior management positions, like when we met back in the day. And I have to say, like across my career and also having worked with many recruiters, you're a true professional. And I'm not just saying it because you're there now and I want to blow smoke up your arse, but when we worked together, and it was my first recruitment process in Spain meeting you, and it was just a great experience. So you have an amazing ability to make candidates really feel special and settled. Thank you for that. So let's give people some practical next steps So when it actually comes to approaching the job search, when it comes to that good stuff, what would be your top 3 actions for somebody who wants to start a job hunt in Spain today? What should they do?
I think it all starts with a really good CV. And I think lots of people struggle. How do I put a CV together? What do I include? Do I need to put my age on it? What's relevant? There's plenty of online resources that can guide you to putting something together. I think keep it brief as well. Most recruiters will read the first page and then not. Terrible to say, but it's a fact of life. So get yourself a good CV that really pulls together the skills that you can transfer to another country into another job, because you may not end up doing the same kind of job that you did in your home country when you move to a new country where you're not native. So that would be my first point. And I think we were chatting earlier about some of the difficulties. If you can get a Spanish phone number quite quickly, get a Spanish phone number when you get here, because I think you get a SIM card quite cheap. I think there's Lobster and some other companies where it's quite cheap in the beginning just to get a Spanish number, because I think that will encourage people to think you're here right now. And I think when I phoned you, actually, I think you have had your Irish phone number. And I said, when are you in Spain? You said, I think I arrived 2 days ago or something. So it's important to do. And I think if you have a name that's difficult to pronounce or is hard for people to recognise, bearing in mind your recruiters might not be English speaking, they might be another language. Use your nickname on your CV and make sure the email address is not something that you created when you'd had a few many glasses of wine the night before. Let's keep it professional. Because seriously, you don't want to be looking at somebody who's got dodgy fans type email address. So do that, because that makes you look more professional in the start.
Fluffy bum 1, 2, 3.
Exactly that. Big boy 780. No, thank you. I'm not the work anyway.
Oh, that's hilarious. But it's so true, because you do see some very strange email addresses.
Very strange.
Think about the CV. Spend time on the CV. I totally agree with you around the Spanish number, because I think from a recruiter perspective, it shows that you have already done the logistical stuff of the move and settled yourself.
I think if you are in a profession that we will call specialist, I don't know, veterinary, dentistry, something that's above the general administrative, I think talking to people that have moved here, talk to your professional body, whoever they happen to be, because it could be that a lot of your qualifications will transfer across. It might need to do something in advance to bring you to the same level as people in Spain. It's a small thing, but it's worth investigating to do that. I think if you're at middle range of jobs like you are and I am, and people that work in administrative, office, customer service, get yourself on LinkedIn, make a profile. It's simple to do. It feels a little bit like a brag wall when you start to list all your qualifications and your skills, but it's not something to be frightened of. Put a nice picture on there. Again, be careful of the picture, appropriate for business, and build your profile, put your skills in there, and then start to connect with people that are working in companies in the city or the town that you know you're going to be moving to. It's easy to research online and just reach out. I probably have 50 or 60 messages a week from people just saying, I'm moving to the area, what are the opportunities like? Or I've seen you've worked in this organisation, what do I need to do? Even if a recruiter just points you to their careers page, you're one step ahead. I would also say if you're looking at hospitality or retail work, which is a big part of where we live here in Spain, then there are some really good groups on Facebook that you can join. You might have to get approval to join. There's expats in Malaga, there's Nordic speakers Malaga, there's all sorts of groups that you could join. And often bars, hotels, shops, people looking for workers locally will put their jobs onto a post there. You're getting things that are more immediate. And then I think it's just about don't be afraid to ask people, talk to people. You never know who is going to be somebody that knows somebody that needs somebody in their organisation. just about networking.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you on that. And I think spending time on the CV, a question on the CV, Serena, and I remember always wondering this when I first moved to Spain. In Ireland, we never put photos on the CV. It's not the dumb thing. But when you come to Europe, particularly the more southern Europe, pictures on a CV are a thing. So what would your advice be, particularly if they weren't comfortable or they weren't coming from a culture that usually operated that didn't feel right? What would you say around that piece?
I deal with both now. And this part of Southern Europe, it's very common. Scandinavian countries, it's very common. I'm also dealing with further east in EMEA, where it isn't common. Don't feel pressured into it. Don't feel that it's going to exclude you or include you. And if you want to put a picture on there, take something, maybe not your passport picture, because that tends to be a little too serious, but just a head and shoulders shot that shows you as you really are. And this is a terrible admission today, I'm terrible with names, but I remember faces. So if I'm looking through scenes, I think I remember that face from before, or I remember that person from interview. And some recruiters will take a screenshot and put it with their notes of your CV photo. Don't be pressurized, but it is useful.
And what I'm hearing from you there is, especially if somebody's coming from a culture where CV isn't normal, if you're entering into a culture where it is more normal, particularly if you're applying for a role in a non-international environment and a more local company, then absolutely it would be the thing, right? So you should be thinking, I need to get this nice headshot done and pop it over onto the CV. I always remember as well when I had a call from somebody who had moved to the area and they weren't really having any luck with their job search. And I remember going, God, that's strange now, because they've a very good CV and I knew their skill set. So I said, do you know what? Send me over the CV and I'll have a little look and see what my thoughts are. And I remember they had a very traditional name. Wow. It was a very traditional Irish name. And anybody that knows Irish names, it's like phonetically, they don't look and sound the same, right?
No, absolutely.
So I'll give you a simple example. It's like Siobhan, Siobha for the N. It doesn't, if you heard that, you wouldn't think that's how you sounded. So this is just an example that very traditional Irish names, they don't look and sound the same. So when I inspected the CV of the person, my feedback back was, you really need to actually simplify your name on the CV, because if a recruiter is there in a high volume environment where they're probably getting thousands of CVs a week, they're going to pick up your CV on the CRM and they're going to just cast you over. So I think you mentioned earlier about popping in a nickname, or just Siobhan, known as Shiv, SHIV.
Absolutely. A good tip.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think when you're applying for roles as well, you need to make the job of the recruiter easy. And I think this is something that people forget if they've never sat on the other side of the fence. So let's bear in mind that this recruiter will be working on very tight deadlines. They're getting thousands of applicants a week, so your role is in demand. So do everything in your power that's going to make their life easy. Look at your name. Get your little headshot up if you're comfortable with that. Keep your CV, as you mentioned at the start, Serena, formatted and easy to read, because they don't have time to be scrolling through pages and pages of information.
And I think as well, again, it seems like something so obvious. Check your phone number's correct. Check that your email is correct, because nothing more frustrating than you're trying to get hold of a candidate and there's a wrong digit in their phone number. So just proofread or get someone else to proofread it once you put it together, and then it's ready to go. And I think another irritation from this side is when people go, oh, I haven't been checking my emails. If you're looking for a job, keep an eye on your emails. Check your junk, check your spam, because if I'm not known to you and I send you an email from our automated system, it's probably going to go straight into your junk. So just keep on top of those points of contact, because otherwise a week could go by and you come back and you've missed the boat.
Absolutely. Make sure your housekeeping is in order. That's great advice, really good advice. And I liked what you mentioned there around Facebook groups. I think that's quite a newer thing. I would imagine when you and I met back in the day and when we worked together, that wasn't as prevalent. So is that something that's changed or evolved more in recent years? Yeah,
definitely. I think there are groups of expats of all nationalities. And I think it's a bit like everything on the internet. Don't take everything as read. So someone might give you advice. Make sure you check it out. but for connections and finding out about what's going on locally. And if the company that you've got your eye on, like where I work, where you and I worked before together, if they've got a Facebook page, follow them, because there will be events, open days, new postings for jobs, links to careers, people that you could connect with on LinkedIn will be on that Facebook page. So just treat job hunting like you're making a friend of it. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your opinions and thoughts around, do you need to speak Spanish to start your job hunt? I get asked this all the time, and I often see as well that it really puts people off starting their job search. Let's talk about how important is this when you're actually starting to look for work?
This is do as I say, not as I'm done, because my Spanish is nowhere near as good as it should be, having lived here all this time. I work in an international organisation where English is the business language. So that gives me a great advantage, and everybody else English is their second language. I think it depends very much on what you're looking to do when you come here. It's never too early to start taking lessons or classes, and some people flourish in one-to-one, some like to do online, some like to do classroom. So I think for those basics and just to find your way around and be able to say hello and shake someone's hand and greet them, that goes a long way with non-English speaking recruiters. Of course it does. And I think if you're going to be working in a customer-facing role, retail, hospitality, probably most people will speak English, but it's nice to have the Spanish part because your paperwork, your pay slips, the things that you need to do on the bureaucracy side will be in Spanish. And I'm not saying you need to understand legal speak or anything like that, but at least if you can understand what you're signing for a contract, what your pay slip looks like, what deductions are for, what you need to get if you're off sick, all of those things that come with employment, then having some basics is great. The trouble is, in this part of Spain, if you answer in Spanish, they go off at 200 miles an hour, and then you're like, okay, I lost those to that. And that's difficult, but you shouldn't be afraid of it. Nobody in Spain will laugh at you if you use the wrong word, the wrong tense, if you substitute a word that's close enough. I work with Spanish colleagues as well as other nationalities, and you pick up so much once you're working alongside them as well, words that come up all the time. So don't be put off. I know the older you are, the harder it is to learn. We all know that. It's like anything. But just even get an app that can help you. If you could do 15 minutes a day in the car before you move, or half an hour at home with your headphones on, just practicing Spanish, just do what you can. It will help.
It really is very dependent on the environment that you're going to work in and the industry. So Malaga, especially in the last 10 years, has really established itself as an international tech hub, and lots of companies, large international companies, are choosing to base themselves in this part of the world because of the access to people with multiple different languages, because of the close proximity to the airport with international routes. So there is a lot of companies here that will be international companies, whereby your business language, your communication in the business is going to be done in English, right? So if you're going to seek out one of those companies, then you don't need Spanish initially to begin your job search. So that's important. But if you're going to base yourself more in a local role where you will need to start to converse in Spanish, yes, absolutely, that's different. You will. So it's about making that differentiation in your mind. And when you're doing your job search, be very specific. Is this an international company?
And I think one of the big indications of that, and we didn't talk about job boards earlier, and maybe we should have done, but there are some very good job boards in Spain, Indeed and Glassdoor, for example. So when you register to get job alerts, you can specify which language, what type of job you're looking for, and the area or the approximate area remote. And I always find, because I've done it and registered because I like to see what's going on, if the job is in Spanish, then they're looking for Spanish. If the job is in English, the chances are that they're looking for English. And if you've got another language, then that's a bonus. So that's usually a real good indication of what the company's looking for.
Absolutely. And I think you made another really good point as well around, it's important to remember that even though you'll be working in an international environment, you'll be likely employed in Spain, right?
Yeah.
Means that that company is not actually obliged to give you your contract of employment or your payslips in English. So
Absolutely not.
you made a great point there, and get familiar with the concepts, get familiar with the terms, because you're going to need to navigate this on a monthly basis. So I guess what we're trying to say is don't let not having a good level of Spanish put you off starting your job search. But if your long-term plan is to integrate and live and work in an environment in Spain, start learning and getting familiar with different concepts.
And I think just touching that on the differences, I think the biggest difference when I went into a proper full-time job like where we work together is that whole bureaucracy about the paperwork that you need. And once you start, you will rely on any company that you start work with to give you some really decent onboarding. So this is what you need to do if you're not feeling well. This is what you need to action. Because I think, and it's changed since I left the UK, and maybe in Ireland the same, that you could phone up workers that are not very well today and have a few days off with a need to go and see a public doctor. It's not the way it works here. Day one, you need to go to your health centre and get a sick note. And I think those kind of things, that Spanish will help you there, but you should also be supported by the HR team in your company as well to make sure that where you need to go and what you need to do. I know where I am now, we've got a relocation team, so they give them lots of help with the paperwork, the bureaucracy. Take this form, sign it there, pay there, this is your appointment. Then they give them information about how to register at a health centre. So those things, you should get the support from your new employer, but it's worth having that little bit of Spanish just to help navigate.
Absolutely, because especially if you've sought out some international companies that you're going to apply to, they'll be very conscious of the fact that they're employing foreigners. So they will usually have somebody within their onboarding team, as you say, or their HR departments that can help you with those FAQs or the things that you need to think about to get ready to start your new job, right? Good. Let's go back a little bit then around, you mentioned the common platforms to use. You mentioned that Indeed and Glassdoor, and people can register for them. Is there any other platforms people should be looking at in your opinion?
I think if you're on LinkedIn, then LinkedIn jobs, I mean, in the job I do now, that's my primary source. And again, you can tailor your alerts to specific job types, specific areas, languages. You probably get things either side of what you want, but that's not a bad thing. I think those three together are probably the most professional. There are some other sites which I've used in the past and registered jobs with, and they don't get the traffic. So I think those three are probably the best. And you can easily translate, if you're in Spain, translate it into English, log on, make an account, and then just wait for the jobs to pop into your inbox.
Amazing. So LinkedIn jobs, because that has really grown in popularity. Yeah, Indeed is definitely what employers use on the ground here, and then Glassdoor. And actually, I believe in Glassdoor as well, you can get a kind of a review of the employer, right? You can get an understanding of what they're like to work with, because ex-employees can rate their experience with them. So that can be quite useful as well.
Really useful. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also about be smart if you're looking for a job. If a job pops up in your box and you think, that's not really me, but I've read a little bit about the company, I can see that's the kind of environment I want to be in, then find them somewhere. Find them on LinkedIn. Find their website. Go to their careers page, because in most companies, you will have the option just to upload your CV in their talent pool or in their future jobs. Use your common sense and think, I'm going to register my job there. It might not come to anything, but there's been many a time that I've gotten to that talent pool when I've been looking for something specific or I need more numbers. I think, just go back to the talent pool and see who's sat there.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and I think as well, I don't want to say lower your expectations. I don't want to say that because that's negative, but I think you also have to be really aware of the fact that perhaps the job that you're doing in your home country, your native country, is not going to be the same level as you may need to go in to a company when you relocate. So I think it's a bit of swallow your pride and go, okay, I want to foot in the door. I want to prove that I can do it, because there will be for all of us, more opportunities. You're a great example of that. Don't be afraid to say, okay, I can do that. Maybe I was doing a bit better before I left wherever. But that's a good opportunity, a good foot in the door.
I think that's a great piece of advice, and it leads me into something that just popped into my mind and feedback that I used to hear from people all the time when they were applying for jobs. So often people can have blinkers on, in my opinion, when they come over and they are applying for their job search, and they might be coming from a country where the salaries are higher than Spain. And then when the salary for the role is advertised in the job ad, there's an assumption that, okay, this is not as senior or it's not as good a role as what I had before, and they rule themselves out of the race. I think people need to be conscious as well that salaries in Spain may be potentially a little bit lower than their home country because the cost of living is a little bit lower. So everything is relative. And I think it's important that people understand that, right, and investigate that a little bit before they start going, oh, I'm not applying for that role. That's not in line with my expectations. You have to really take a holistic view of this.
I think you have to think about, if you've been coming to Spain on holiday, let's say, for a few years, and that prompts you to want to move here. You hear it all the time when we're out and about, you and I having a drink, or we're sat in a restaurant. Oh, this is so cheap. This is half the price at my home country, a tenth of the price. Okay, so then if here, you've got to also look at it that way. And I think we have people sat in different parts of Europe, and our salaries vary hugely because in their country, it's a lot higher cost of living, higher taxes. So absolutely. And if you want to do your homework, put into ChatGPT, what's the average salary in Malaga for whatever the job is? And it will give you a to and a from. So just keep that in mind, because you're quite right. You can't, it's apples and pears. It's completely different when you come here, and don't rule yourself out for that reason. For sure.
Yeah, and I think when you move to Spain as well, you're not living like a holiday maker. You're not out all of the time or eating in restaurants that might be typically in tourist hotspots. You're living like a local. So your costs and your living expenses are localized. It takes people a little bit of time to get used to that.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest shock, and I think it still sometimes surprises me, you walk to work in the morning and it's 8:30, 9 o'clock. Every cafe, people are out having breakfast. Every single day. There might be a coffee and a toast or a croissant. And when people come here on a holiday, they go, oh, and a coffee and a small toast, €3. That would be 10 quid in England. It's definitely a different way of doing it. And we don't eat in the tourist places. We, as you say, where locals go, we drink where locals drink. We're not on holiday.
And when we worked together, one thing I noticed that you do is that you look at CVs and you identify the skill sets in the CV and you go, that person might be interesting for another day. So it's back to the point that you mentioned earlier. It costs you nothing to upload your CV to the company website. It costs you nothing to reach a recruiter and just say, maybe I don't match this role today, but keep me in mind for the future. Because in my own case, when we worked together, you did that with me. You felt, this could be interesting for a future day. You were right. And that's something that you do very well with people. I think this also gives hope to people, right? It shows them that just because that role is not there today, it may be there in the future. And your task is really around building relationships.
And thank you for that. And it was, I think, what you're not telling people is that your background was so perfect for the organisation that I was working in. I was like, I'm keeping this for the future. Because often you will hear a whisper that something's coming and nothing's happened officially, or this might be happening in 3 months or 6 months. So yeah, a good recruiter should always be looking at building those relationships. And yeah, it worked out well for us in the end. So it was a good move. And it does happen. You can't give people false promises. But if you know somebody's a good person, you meet them, that recruiter keeps in touch. I've got people now from when we first started working together that I still get the odd message from, or they'll ping me a quick LinkedIn message just to say hi, and is there anything happening where I am now? So it is about relationships for sure.
And I would like, the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think if people are planning on making life in Spain a long-term thing, think long-term, build relationships that will provide longevity to you, because just because a business might have a role that you're looking for today does not necessarily mean that they may not have something for you in a future point in time. Be more holistic in your approach rather than thinking from role to role.
And I think everybody needs to earn a living. So you might have to take a job that's okay for now. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think, there was a lot in years gone by about people taking a career break or having a gap in their CV or seeing that somebody's gone from this job down a job and then back up. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In the big picture of things in the world, people sometimes need to take a break for all sorts of reasons. And we're not there to judge why that should be. But don't be afraid to think, okay, I was doing a job at this level. I'm actually employed. I'm in a company and it's maybe a step or two down. But you're earning money, you're making connections, you're being visible, you're being there in case there's another opportunity. And any good manager or good team leader or good MD will say that person's doing a great job. Let's give them some more responsibility. Let's move them up once they prove themselves. Yeah, don't be afraid. Don't have any vanity attached to it. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
No, that's really helpful. And thank you for sharing that, because lives, right?
Oh.
And people often need to look after a relative or a parent or a child or something, or health, lives. So people get into their heads a little bit and go, oh God, there's this gap on my CV. That's not important, provided you're honest with the reason behind it, I think.
And I think that it used to be take a gap year when you finish university. I see people in their 40s and 50s taking a year to travel around the world in some way. What's wrong with that? Nothing. And you actually shouldn't have to justify that gap, in my opinion. Every recruiter's different. But I think if you have a reason and you offer it, that's a good point to make. Yeah, I did take a year out because I was struggling with a health issue or taking care of a parent, or as you say, things got in the way and I needed to be at home full time. Fine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And career, years ago, you're right. Like years ago, everybody thought that a career path had to be linear, but it's not like that anymore. It's different. And I think we're more open-minded in the world about this too. You can explore a different path. You can go back and study. You can try something else. I love that you've mentioned that. That's really good for people to note. Serena, if somebody's sitting at home today and they're like, that's it, Serena has inspired me now. She's talked to me over my concerns. I'm going to start that job search now. What's the first thing that they should do?
Write a list of the jobs that you think you can do. If that's from where I am now and I'm a customer service team leader to I could be a customer service advisor. I could be a back office assistant. I could be a receptionist. I could be whatever. Don't limit yourself. And just, I'd say chase everything, but be realistic that it may take a little while as well. I think, don't limit and say, oh, I've had 5 no thank yous in my first 5 applications. Okay, fine. But you have to keep trying and just keep alive. That's where I want to be. That's the company I want to be in, or that's those 2 companies, or that's an opportunity. But actually, the little bar at the corner of my street has offered me some work for the next 6 months. I'm going to take it. That's what I'm definitely.
And I think that's such relevant advice, whether you're in Spain or anywhere else in the world, because again, life's, and you might have to do something as a stopgap to support you for your greater goal. So
absolutely.
Sometimes we're very hard on ourselves, aren't we? Oh, I don't want to be telling Mary down in the pub or Johnny in the gym that I have to do this, but they won't care. You have to support yourself and financially survive. That's great advice. Serena, this has been so insightful. There's loads of value there. So thank you so much. If people want to connect with you or they found this episode useful and they'd like to just reach out and say hi, I know your inbox is very high volume anyway, but how can they do that? How can they say hello?
You have my email address work and you have my LinkedIn contact. So if that's something that you can include in podcast notes, then please do. And let me know that's where it came from, because that's always puts me in that, okay, what's this person reading from me rather than from a direct job application. And I will happily share careers page for where I am. I'm happy to share that. I can give you that, Sandra, as well, before the podcast goes out. And I think, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody literally that I haven't spoken to in a long time who pinged a message to me, and I actually connected them with someone else who was much better placed to find them an opportunity, and both parties messaged you back and said, thanks for that connection. Actually, this person is perfect for something that we're looking for. So just, Yeah, use the connection.
Amazing. So I'll put Serena's LinkedIn information in the show notes of this episode so that people can search on LinkedIn and stop by and say hello.
And I was going to say, it could be that you might have some other questions. People start to have a whole new set of questions. Then invite me back. Any opportunity to chat with you anytime. Perfect.
Serena, thank you so much. It's been an absolutely brilliant chat. And for anyone who's listening, I hope you're feeling a little bit more hopeful and a little bit more prepared. Now, 2 quick things before we wrap up. If you want to connect with Serena, we've popped her details into the show notes. She is a fantastic human being, and I feel very, very grateful to have met Serena all those years ago when I was beginning my career journey in Spain. And if you're finding this podcast helpful, please can I ask a very small favour? Please take a second to follow or subscribe on your platform of choice. And if you're really enjoying the podcast, leave a quick review. It helps us reach more people. And honestly, it means we can keep sharing this kind of content with you completely free. That's it from me for today, and we'll see you on the next episode. Ciao for now. Thank you so much for listening into today's episode on the Costa Property Podcast. Another fantastic episode learning about the highs and lows of relocating to the Costa del Sol from real people who have been through the journey themselves, and of course our wonderful experts. If you have been enjoying the show so far, remember to hit subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating or review.
We absolutely love hearing your thoughts. Please send any questions that you would like us to answer on the show to warner@wlcostaproperties.net, or you can pop us a message on our socials, which are in the show notes. Remember, you can also visit the website www.wlcostaproperties.net.
See you on the next episode, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.